He was the last truly great monarch of the 20th dynasty, the dominant Pharaoh Ramesses III.
He seems to have been a very powerful and successful pharaoh.
Despite perceptions, some experts suggest the king has troubles at home.
Towards the end of his reign, there does appear to have been some problems with law and order, so there may have been gathering storm clouds towards the end of his reign.
These stormy last years become the basis for a long-held theory. Ramesses III is the target of an assassination plot.
The assassination of Ramesses III and the attempt to put someone other than his designated successor on the throne is definitely a coup d'etat.
But there is a problem with the theory. No one's ever been able to prove that his death is murder. Now, scientists think cutting-edge technology could reveal new information in a key piece of evidence: Ramesses' body.
The mummy of Ramesses III is labeled. It was rewrapped and reburied following the end of the New Kingdom. So we know that it's his body.
The pharaoh's corpse now lies in the Egyptian Museum in Cairo. When scientists carry out an initial examination in 2012, they find no obvious causes of death.
There's no evidence of any kind of diseases or trauma or any indication why he could have died.
But on closer scrutiny, there is an obvious clue. While most of the bandages on the body were taken off during antiquity, in one spot, the bandages have been left intact.
Most interestingly, they have a thick layer of bandages just around the neck. And this couldn't have been removed in the earlier attempt, so it remains there forever.
The bandages appear intact from the time of the burial, suggesting they could be hiding something. Unlike other post-mortem examinations that dissect the body, the scientists decide not to remove the bandages. Instead, they use a 21st century method of investigation.
In recent times, it's been possible to examine mummies in more detail using CT scans.
We are allowed to make new CT scans of the mummy to look, let's say, inside the body, which we cannot see from outside.
They scan Ramesses III for the first time in history, creating a 3D image of the 3,000-year-old corpse. When the scientists study the scans of the neck, they're horrified.
It became clear that there is a very deep gash that runs across his throat.
Everything cut, the muscles, the skin, and even the arteries.
So we're talking here about a really deep cut, several inches deep. It actually cuts back to the vertebrae at the back of the neck, so a really deep gash to the neck.
A wound of this type can mean only one thing: murder.
It would have been very rapidly fatal.
There's no chance to survive such a cut. It's really a typical deadly cut wound of this neck. Inside the wound, there's a little amulet.
And in the CT scan, you could see it's the shape of an Ujat eye, of the Eye of Horus, and that is a healing amulet.
And this is an amulet the ancient embalmer puts in to heal something, to repair something.
So it's as if to make up for the fact that he died in such a violent and traumatic way, that they're adding that amulet to almost undo the damage that was done.
It is enough evidence for some Egyptologists to make a final conclusion about the fate of Ramesses III.
The CT scans of the mummy of Ramesses III indicate that he was the victim of a vicious assassination. The tomb at Deir el-Bahri, containing most of the mummies of the rulers of the New Kingdom, is discovered in the 1880s.
And one of the mummies is very unusual.
The so-called screaming mummy.
And this mummy is unique because it has his mouth wide open. It looks like it's really screaming.
The physical evidence of the screaming mummy indicates that he died a violent death.
For decades, the screaming mummy is an enigma. But in 2012, scientists perform an autopsy on the horrifying corpse. It reveals something even more sinister.
It is not in a nice sarcophagus with its name written on it, and the mummy has not been mummified. It is simply a naturally dried out corpse.
We have every indication that he was intentionally not embalmed properly. His internal organs were left in his body. He was buried in ritually impure goat skin.
It appears to some that this is done deliberately.
I mean, this seems that the priests, the embalmers, who enacted this bizarre version of the mummification ritual took care to not give him a proper burial.
Some Egyptologists speculate that this person may have been cursed in his burial in some way.
From the outer side, around his neck, there were some wrinkles. It looks really like that there was a rope around his neck, and maybe he died of suffocation.
The evidence suggests the man is strangled or hanged. It could be a punishment or a gruesome crime. Egyptologists turn to ancient records for more information. Re-examining an ancient papyrus found in the 19th century, they discover something incredible. Trial records describing a plot to assassinate Ramesses III.
The judicial papyrus of Turin contains the testimony of the conspirators who took part in this conspiracy.
When experts study the section naming the accused, they're even more intrigued. On trial is one of the king's wives, Queen Tai. Also mentioned is her son, Pentaweret.
It tells us their names, it tells us what they did as part of the conspiracy, who they interacted with, so they give us the names of their collaborators.
This is an attempt to change the arc of Egyptian history.
Some of the conspirators seem to have been swiftly sentenced.
Lower-ranking conspirators are executed, often in very gruesome ways. Some of them seem to have been impaled on spikes.
But it appears the judge faces a dilemma with others.
Because several of the perpetrators in the assassination of Ramesses III are members of the royal family, how do you handle the death penalty?
Historians can find very little record of Queen Tai's fate, but they uncover a chilling sentence for Pentaweret. The pharaoh's son is found guilty and ordered to kill himself.
Pentaweret performed suicide, possibly by hanging himself.
Experts now consider an extraordinary new theory. The screaming mummy could be Pentaweret, Ramesses III's son, and possible conspirator to the pharaoh's murder. To prove the theory, scientists turn to the field of genetics, hoping to confirm the screaming mummy's identity.
There were many guesses about who he might be, but we had to wait until DNA evidence was available and testing was available.
Forensic anthropologist Dr. Albert Zink leads the investigation.
We installed a DNA laboratory in Cairo, close to the museum, to extract the DNA and then also to multiply the DNA and to get in the end a genetic fingerprint of the mummy.
Dr. Zink and his team extract a sample from the bone of the screaming mummy, believing they have found ancient DNA. When he compares the sequencing data of the screaming mummy with DNA taken from the body of Ramesses III, he's stunned.
What we see when we analyze the DNA of both mummies that they indeed share 50% of their DNA, so it's highly likely, based on this genetic test, that they're indeed father and son.
It is a shocking and unexpected result. Based on this information, some Egyptologists believe they can make a conclusion about the screaming mummy.
If we put all of this evidence together with the papyri, it makes the most sense that the screaming mummy is Prince Pentaweret.
It means the son of Ramesses III may have been instrumental in a plot to kill his own father, the 20th dynasty Pharaoh of Egypt. Then he hanged for it